Good morning. Wow, I love to look out and see a full house today. I welcome all of you here. My name is Kimberly McQuarrie, and I'm the Director of Programming and the Co-Director of the Innovation Labs here at the Dalí. And I want to thank you for joining us for this special edition of our Coffee with the Curator series, focused on our special exhibition, The Shape of Dreams. I hope you were able to catch the first lecture in this series on The Shape of Dreams by Dr. Ruth Ann Atchley in December. If not, you can navigate to our YouTube channel to check it out. And then we'll also be joined next month by Father Keffer to talk about religious visions and dreams. So we're going to have some exciting things. Today, of course, I have the distinct pleasure of being able to invite my boss, our wonderful executive director and the curator of this exhibit, Hank Hine, to speak on this exhibit. Now, before we get to the talk, of course, we always want to give thanks, and would like to thank the City of St. Petersburg for their support. They make things like this lecture possible for us. And then, of course, we also want to thank our amazing members. Without you, we literally couldn't do what we do. And today, we're also very lucky to have some of our amazing sponsors here for this special exhibition, The Shape of Dreams. And I wanted to just give a special shout out to our presenting sponsors, Therapeutic Tommy Bahama Mattresses, the Antonori and Weinman families, and our additional supporting sponsors, Aveda Florida, our airport partners, St. Pete Clearwater, B&O Creative Labs, Sandy Taraski and David Zern, and our hotel partner, Tradewinds Island Resorts. So thank you so much to them. Now, of course, we always invite you when you want to know about more of our programs, more of the exciting things that we're doing to support this exhibit. You can always visit our website, thedalí.org, for more information about our activities and programs. And I'm just going to share some of the ones for January. I hope to whet your appetite a little bit about some of the exciting things we have in connection with this exhibit and our normal programming. So we are going to be starting a new monthly lunchtime art and meditation series. So I'm super excited about that. We're going to start that next week. We'll also be resuming live poetry now. Next week, we're going to be here in the theater, and that's going to be amazing, of course, as always. Our yoga at the Dalí, and then we're going to have a very special workshop with Paper Seahorse from over in Tampa, and they're going to be doing a dream journal workshop, and that is definitely something not to be missed. Our story time in Dilly Dally will also be happening this month if you have any little ones and want to bring them into the museum. And then we're going to be having an opera performance focused on another aspect of dreams, the American dream. And then rounding out this month will be a lecture by a local dream expert on why we dream. So a lot of really exciting things happening, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. Other exciting things coming up are going to be a wonderful dream tasting menu curated by Chef Chuck, a mixology class, a collage workshop. There's just all kinds of things focused on dreams. So I hope you'll be able to join us for some of those, if not all of those programs. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce my boss, Dr. Hank Hine. And Hank told me not to belabor his introduction, but you know, we all know the amazing background that Hank has. So I will just limit it then to something just special that I wrote for him. I won't go through his degrees or his past jobs, but I do mean this from the bottom of my heart. Here at the museum, you can see Hank's influence and vision in everything we do. From the theoretical underpinnings of our educational mission, which are grounded in the power of art and creativity to expand human capabilities and transform our lived realities, to the concrete, the beautiful building that surrounds us, the exhibits, both permanent and visiting, that we delight in, and the digital experiences that extend our understanding and appreciation for art. And in ways too small to catalog, but that are all around us, everything in this museum bears Hank's publisher's mark. And we're extremely grateful for everything that he does. And today we're going to get a really special treat because we're going to be able to get the inside view and insights from the curator of the exhibit, Shape of Dreams. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Hank Hine.
Thank you, Kim. That was very generous. Appreciate it. I'm going to begin with a little product placement from our store, the Dalí water, available. And further product placement, this is the catalog of the exhibition. Good morning. How did you sleep? You had some good dreams? Good. Because, that's the wonderful thing. That's what we wish for each other, isn't it? We say that at night, we say, sweet dreams, good night. In Mexico, they say, sueña con los angelitos, dream with the little angels. And I think that a dream is a little angel in that way. It delivers something special to you. Every dream is a gift. Dreams are at once tools, provocations, and for us, they are a solace in our lives. The imagery and meaning of a dream is everyone's individual and private hearth. Yet dreams are a territory that is difficult to explore. We consistently return to dream at night, depart from it in the day, or if you take the position of Calderón de la Barca, the dream begins when we awake. We only directly experience dream while asleep. And when we awake, when we ponder its shape, palpate the emotion that accompanied it, we're actually reconstructing something. We are engaged in an aesthetic recreation of an experience that's totally ephemeral. The dream has already departed when we awake. When we awake, the dream may seem alien and apart from our ordinary thoughts and experiences. Yet it delivers an experience of such salience, of such power and intimacy, seeming to approach us directly, that we are urgent to find out what its meaning is, how we can hold it, how we can use it to steer our lives as though it had some kind of private, secret message for us. Now, from a neurological perspective and psychological, dreams are cognitive and emotional experiences during sleep. They present themselves with the same authenticity as our waking experiences, vivid, engaging, irrefutable. They engage those areas of our brain that are also engaged while awake, the hippocampus with its spatial recollection, the amygdala abounding in emotion, and every sense faculty. In fact, in most ways, dreams neurologically are indistinguishable from waking experience. I want to mention a few writers because dreams have been explored by writers as well as artists who really give us our sense of what dreams are, and it has varied through different eras. On the upper left, going left to right, you see Artemidorus. He was a 2nd century Roman, and he had several books on dreams and their interpretation. And his statement was that every dream is someday fulfilled. Aristotle was the first to ascribe an internal source to dreaming, not from beyond, but from inside. And he recognized that dreams were provoked by the brain and the sense organs. Montaigne, when we get into the Renaissance and the Enlightenment period, there's a tremendous skepticism about dreams that pervades our culture. Montaigne said that he thought dreams were an abomination, but what was even worse was waking life. And he said, if you think you do terrible things in your dreams, in the world we do much worse in waking. Descartes was a great skeptic. He distrusted sensory impressions at all. He, in a sense, believed, like Plato, that there were pure ideas that could be delivered, but you could not reach them through the senses. And of course, that's Freud, whose exploration of dreams really was the foundation of his theory of repression. And then next to him is Carl Jung. And Jung extended the idea of where dreams come from, proposing the idea of the collective unconscious. So I want to start just thinking about one painting. And this is a painting by Johann Tischbein, and it's called Odysseus and Penelope. And it's actually Odysseus, it's Penelope, Odysseus, and Penelope's servant, who was Odysseus's nursemaid as a child. And in this brief passage in the Odyssey, which this depicts, Odysseus has returned home, and he's disguised by Athena to be much older. He's disguised as a beggar, and he presents himself to the court to see what's going on. And of course, what he finds out is that his wine is being drunk, his game is being slaughtered, and there's a group of 40 or 50 men who are trying to woo his wife so they can take over his properties. Bad scene. So he comes in and he's shown this greatest hospitality, as was the Greek tradition then. And Penelope says, I would love to talk to you, stranger, to see if you heard something perhaps of my husband in your wanderings. But first, I would like to have you bathed. And the nursemaid goes to bathe him, and she's washing his leg, and she sees a scar. And that scar she recognizes from his boyhood when he was gored by a wild boar. And you can see her looking back to see what's going to happen in this conversation. So somewhat cleaned up, but still supposedly unrecognizable, Odysseus sits down with Penelope, his wife, and she says, I had a dream, and I wonder if you would interpret it for me. In my dream, I was feeding 40 fat geese, and out of the sky, an eagle came and tore them to pieces. What can this mean? And he says, lady, it's very clear what that means. Your husband is going to be home soon, and clear your house of these reprobates. And she says, maybe. But sometimes a dream is of no consequence at all, like a cobweb. So in this exchange, you get the whole fascinating range of dream, its intense personal meaning, the question of its validity, where might it come from? She has mentioned that the tradition in Greek philosophy was that there are two gates from which dreams pass from the beyond to the individual. One is a gate made of horn, and those are true dreams. And one is a gate made of ivory, and that's where false prophecies come from. So she's skeptical about it. And in this interplay, you can sense that the dream may not have happened at all. She may be putting this forward to provoke her husband. Perhaps she recognizes him. So dreams are totally mysterious, can be highly useful, and are also part of our interpersonal commerce. So Every dreamer in recalling their dream, I would propose, is in some sense like Penelope, fascinated with the portent of the remembered experience while uncertain as to whether it was true or should be dismissed. Why did I dream this? Why this memory? Why this place, this feeling? We always ask ourselves. Is this my invention or the perception of some objective truth? Assumptions such as these are inherent in every pictorial representation of dreams. For me, it's useful to consider dreams from three perspectives, but we have to recall that we don't require of waking life that it be only one thing. It has many dimensions. So dreams, too, have many dimensions. So I would like to suggest that it's sometimes useful to start an inquiry of a dream from what is its origin, what is its nature, and then of what use can be made of it. And when we ask, what is the source of a dream? Is it internally or externally generated? We must ask if it is externally generated from where? From spirits, from objects, from place, from other people? If it's formed internally, is it from the body? As Hobbes said, he said, dreams are just sign of indigestion. Or is it from the mind? And if it's from the mind, what part of the mind? We have this thing called a default network that neurologist describes, a loose circuit of activity when we're not in focused mode. Our mind goes through memories, through images, through recollections. If our dreams are sourced from experience, is it recent or long past? Milton asked in Paradise Lost, is a dream the work of the day, or is it tomorrow's next design? What is its nature? What is the nature of a dream? Where is it staged? Is it something that's exclusively personal, or do we all have a common dream? Is that part of its nature? And what circumstances generate the dream? What faculties are engaged in it? How much of our mind is there? We know we don't move or move only minimally. Is there a creative element to dreams? Can we dream of things totally unexperienced by us? Is the dream a random psychic experience, or is it organized in some way? If aligned with some pattern, is that pattern hierarchical? Is the emotion of a dream identical to its subject? And finally, what is the utility of a dream? Freud asked, is it beneficial, he asked? Is it possible that a dream can reform an opinion held prior to that dream, which would be the real test of it? Or is the dream without benefit psychologically an artifact? Does it increase our awareness? Is it preparation for an event? Well, we find rich evidence of all these positions in our Euro-American tradition of art. And let's take a look at some of these that we are showing upstairs. So the painter is called the master of the story of Joseph. And if you recall Joseph from Genesis, this is the Old Testament Joseph. Joseph has a lot of dreams, and they got him in trouble at first. At first, Joseph dreamed that he grew more corn than his brothers, and he told them about that. Then he told them that he had a dream that he was favored by their father. These were not useful dreams to his well-being, and you recall they threw him in a ditch, and he was to die, but he was picked up by slavers and taken to Egypt. And in Egypt, he's thrown into prison because his master's wife says that he made advances on her, which was not true. But he's put in prison, and there he's given the gift of prophecy. It's a rather nice Egyptian prison. room, well outfitted. But he's there with the Pharaoh's baker and the Pharaoh's cupbearer. The cupbearer was the person who produced the wine and made sure tasted it, and gave it to Pharaoh. So Pharaoh's angry with them. He's thrown them into prison, and they talk about their dreams. And the cupbearer, who's there on the right, had a dream that he had a plethora of grapes for the next season. And the baker had a dream that he was carrying bread to the Pharaoh, and it was attacked by crows. And Joseph said to the baker, "In 3 days you will be executed." And to the wine bearer, "In 3 days you will be freed." And those things came true. And then he goes on, and this was actually described in another painting by this same artist. He goes on to predict famine in Egypt, and Pharaoh then prepares for it and puts away stores, and they're able to survive 7 years of famine. Great utility of dream. But the dream's source was from God. This painting by Domenico Fetti, Jacob's Dream, is also from Genesis. And in this, Jacob has left his land because his brother wants to kill him. He's very tired, and he lays his head down on a rock, and he has a dream of a ladder, a staircase that opens and connects him to heaven. And God speaks to him in this dream, which was given by God, speaks to him and says, "You will always have access to the heavenly, and this covenant also seals your rights to this land where you lay your head on that rock." Rock was his pillow. Another dream from God, and we'll revisit this in another context later. This is the Karachi painting, The Dream of Catherine of Alexandria. Luca Giordano, Diana and Endymion. This is a dream that is given by a deity, and the deity here is Diana, the moon. And the handsome shepherd, Endymion, lies on the hillside tending his flocks every night, his face turned upward, and Diana falls in love with him, and she visits him and lies with him each night in his dreams. And in the morning, she departs. The same theme was painted, painted in Italy. This was painted in France. Nicolas Poussin, Céline, and Endymion. And they take a different, that is, Poussin takes a different position on this. His Endymion wakes, and he wants to go with Diana. He wants to go with the moon. He can't. He can't. He's a mortal, and he can only reach the divine, lie with the goddess in his dreams. That's our access to the beyond, not in waking life. And dreams can come from other forces as well. This painting by Salvatore Rosa is called The Dream of Aeneas. Aeneas, exhausted after wandering from Troy through Carthage, is now in Italy and lying on the banks of the Tiber River, and the spirit of the Tiber River, Tibernus, comes to him in the dream and points, as you can see here, points to the place he will found Rome and create that. And Dalí too felt that land could give rise to dreams. Here he says the rocks of his area at night would create shadows that generated nightmare. The source of dream for the surrealists was, according to Freud's ideas, that we had access in our minds to the beyond, but also dreams were expressions of repression. And this painting by Paul Delvaux is another expression of the source of dream being internal. Arthur B. Davies, whose painting Stars and Dews and Dreams of Night takes its source from a line by Charles Algernon Swinburne, a pre-Raphaelite poet, and he illustrates this dreamlike state that the poetry has put him in a reverie about this female figure in moonlight in a garden. So approaching the nature of dream as a method of inquiry here, Thomas Buchanan Reed, The Painter's Dream. There's an old adage in European folklore that asks, what does the goose dream of? The goose dreams of corn. That dream is wish fulfillment. And I think we can attribute that source to this painting in which the angels pull back for the painter in his dream a vision of Venus, this erotic vision of beauty that will propel the artist in his work. And going back to Nicolas Poussin, we have to consider that fact that Aurora and Apollo are already flying through the sky. Day is pulling back the curtain of night, and Endymion has woken and addresses her, and it looks like he's addressing her in supplication. Is it possible for me to go with you? And if you look at where her arm touches his shoulder, she's gently restraining him and explaining the limits of dream and the limits of mortality as well. So it's a very touching painting showing us how limited we are. One aspect of the dream is that it's always all-encompassing. I called it irrefutable before, but it's a dimension that you can't leave. And this painting by Dalí, which is called The Font, you see how high the horizon is and how compressed things are, everything, the shadows, the blinding light from a place you can't quite see. It's almost claustrophobic, and that all-encompassing, irrefutable nature is a quality of dreams. And visions and nightmares are another aspect of the nature of dreams. This painting by Borgiani of the Vision of Saint Jerome. Jerome in his youth, he was from a prosperous family, and he used to go out and party and drink, and he had a vision in which Christ in the heavens looked down on his angels who were then flogging Jerome to bring him to his senses. And then, of course, you can see the book that's open at the foot. That's predictive of the Bible that Jerome will translate from Hebrew to Latin. All-encompassing, irrefutable, there we are with this woman prostrate on a couch, and this demon sits on her, Fuseli's nightmare. And it's so compelling and so inescapable. I'm going to move the slide quickly so it won't. But I would tell you that Freud had an etching copy of this in his office. Wilfredo Lamb, The Dream. It may not be something that, from our Western perspective, the Orishas descending may seem frightening, but it's probably a very positive dream. But you can see how all-encompassing it is. And claustrophobic. We'll return to this one in another section. This is Max Beckmann's The Dream, but all those figures together. Another aspect of the dream is that transformation that happens. So in Frida Kahlo's painting, a beautiful painting upstairs, which is called Tunas, and the tuna is a cactus, the fruit of a cactus. And those are three examples of tunas. And The one in the middle has just been freshly peeled, and the one on the left has started to exude a little bit of its sap, and the one on the right is, effulgent with this kind of blood coming out. As a matter of fact, it has stained the fabric around it, which, as you know, in every painting in our tradition, if you have a fabric covering around, it's a reference to Veronica's veil and to the cloth that wiped Christ's brow. And so this sense of fruit transforming into organ and the transformation of life to death and the spirit coming with the Veronica's veil reference around it, transformation. Here we see these metamorphosed and perhaps imaginary animals, the sort we might find in a dream. Joseph Campbell believed that the collective unconscious and the penetration of dream into another world was its character. He wrote that dreams contain images and thoughts that have never been experienced. And these imaginary animals of Leonora Carrington, I think she would ascribe to that as well, that these images are from the beyond. One thing we've learned in neurologic studies is that dreams contain different time scales. And dreams combine the very recent experiences, things from the last few days, with things long forgotten that are in our memory. And the transformed dream of Giorgio de Chirico illustrates this beautifully, because on the far left, you have this bust of Apollo in marble, this timeless object, and ripening fruit on the right. And then this transitory thing in the background, you see the smoke coming from the locomotive. So it's almost a diagram of the memory scales of dreams. The term's used a lot in psychology and neurology is hyperassociativity. It just means that to a high degree, we put everything together. I think you might describe surrealism as hyperassociativity. It's the method of collage, taking things of different classes and pulling them together. And that's the creative aspect of dreams. It's hyperassociativity. Kurt Sellerman's magnetic mountain, this hyperassociativity exactly of all these odd heraldic things held together as though, he's calling it magnetic. What is the magnetic force? The magnetic force is memory, compressed by the force of dream. And Dalí's, you've got female figures floating. You've got a landscape, tables, something that looks like the vascularized hand at the top, geometric figures. Again, that's surrealism par excellence, the collage of hyperassociative images. Enchanted beach with three fluid graces. Dalí is conflating the human face with the landscape. You can see the figure on the far right. The face is actually, as you get closer and closer, you see the face is formed by a cave, and that cave provides the features of eyes and nose. So the landscape being merged with the human form. One way of just looking at the show, if you have a chance to go back up today, is just to look for curtains. And the dream, is, in a sense, is emblematic of that curtain. And here in this Paul Delvaux that we saw, we have a female figure about to pull the curtain closed. And you see the figure of death there, the skeleton. When she pulls that curtain closed, on what side will that skeleton be? We don't know. We don't know whether the dream world is equated with death or whether the opposite, whether the waking world has those horrors. What clinical studies have found about dreaming is that the more emotionally charged an experience is, the more likely it is to be replayed again and again in your dreams. There are elements of memory that bear an ontologic or emotional similarity that come together. So you remember you were making a salad and chopping vegetables, and you'll suddenly have a dream of going to a lumber mill as a child. Something about that action. The mind puts them together and tries to create a larger meaning from your experiences. Yeah, we're back with that curtain. Amazingly, so that's an emblematic figure on the right. That's the figure of day, and she's pulling back the curtain of night. And that signals the end of the reverie, the end of Endymion's tryst with Selene, and it's also something that just can't be stopped. You see these little angels are pulling back the curtain, revealing Venus. We need those little angels to give us the artistic vision as well. And we can think of Dream, this show, as being explored through ladders. This is Joan Mirau's dog barking at the moon. We can look at this considering the source of Dream as well, because Mirau said that in the 20s when he painted this, he was so poor that he would go for days without eating anything and would hallucinate. A little bit like Dalí's method of taking his image, making his images from his dreams. Mirau would hallucinate and see these things and paint them. Sorry. This is another Jacob's ladder, and we're seeing the ladder now as a grand Renaissance staircase. Giorgio Vasari, who wrote the lives of the Renaissance painters, and God is up there declaring the access to heaven of Jacob's people because of this dream. And I think that this Magritte painting is also a sort of ladder, the kind of Russian doll ascent of this figure getting smaller and ascending. And perhaps the most terrifying ladder of all is this painting by Max Beckmann called The Dream. And can you see that many of the figures are deformed and they have their eyes closed, they're blinded. This is a painting by a German artist in 1921. And World War I ended disastrously for the Germans. And now the reparations demanded by France and England are bankrupting the country. You remember the stories of people having to carry wheelbarrows of cash to get a loaf of bread. But unlike Jacob's ladder, that dream is a nightmare, because that ladder the ascent is blocked. There's a firm ceiling at the top. And it's amazingly predictive as a work of art of what's going to happen the next decade in Germany. A blinded people with no escape. Last month, if you were here and you heard Ruth Ann Ashley give this really wonderful account of the different types of sleep and the different types of dream within sleep. She pointed out that REM sleep is the predominant rapid eye movement sleep, is the dream that Dalí was accessing when he was making his images. And you get very hyper-associative images, very strange images. But what's been learned after that is that all phases of sleep can have dream components. What I find most fascinating is even more recent research has shown that, well, first of all, that we have a kinship with all mammals and all birds in that they have REM sleep, and thus they do dream. And isn't that wonderful that birds and mammals have this kinship? What's fascinating to me is that REM sleep is most predominant in human beings in the last trimester of their in utero development. So in the last 3 months of a fetus's growth, 85% of the sleep is REM sleep. What's going on? One theory is that they are developing the mind internally, that they're creating these neuronal ensembles as they link the different sense apparatus, the different parts of the brain that will eventually allow them to experience and interpret the world. Amazing. And in that way, art and dreaming have a lot in common. Odysseus Redon warned other artists that cultivating art from visual appearances alone was a big mistake. And dreams, by their unbridled nature, by their freedom, will free us from, as artists, from the slavery to mimetic representation. We find that the world can be quite different in dreams, and that liberates artists. In this painting by Redon, you've got, the butterfly. This is called The Dream of Butterflies. The butterfly is the emblem of metamorphosis par excellence, right? It changes from a cocoon to a pupae to something that takes to the air and flies. So is this the artist's dream of butterflies, or is this the dream of butterflies that he's connected to? Pat Steer, in this painting from 1990, 16 waterfalls of dreams, memories, and sentiment. Rather than depicting a particular dream or a particular episode in dreamlike way, Steer proceeds metaphorically, and she simulates the process of the layering of memory and feeling that constitutes the dream by putting subsequent layers of thin veils of paint so that they merge together in that hyper-associative, creative way that a dream proceeds. And like a painting, a dream is an aesthetic creation. A painting that takes as its subject a dream must create in a two-dimensional space the dynamic aspect of the experience that's being depicted and the extended time and compressing it into one two-dimensional tableau. And making a work of art is very much a form of dreaming in that manner. So Dalí's The Font. I think that the complexity of this scene suggests, an incredible narrative. It's a bit horrifying what it might be describing, but again, as with Pollock, who's an abstract expressionist, here's this surrealist representative artist creating a dynamic scene of many dimensions and many possible interpretations, and the feeling of complexity that's in that and holding it in a two-dimensional form. Philip Guston's painting, which I hope you've seen upstairs, is just amazing. It's called The Daydream. And Guston stated that when he draws a hooded figure, he is in that. He is the hooded figure. So whatever we associate with hooded figures, it's usually malevolent, secretive, someone hiding their identity to do something pernicious. It's a self-portrait, he says, but it's also a scene in the studio. He's smoking, thinking about that to me seems to be a thought bubble. And it's very ambiguous. It's hyper-associative. You've got what looks like a toaster, maybe a cleaver, some shoes. Doesn't really add up. But what's fascinating is that there's a difference between dreams and daydreams. And the part in the prefrontal cortex is where our sense of shame and conscience is developed. And when we dream, as we all know, we dream in an unbridled fashion. We'll do things, we may do things that we would not do when waking. But in daydreams, that moral sense is engaged because that default network, the prefrontal cortex, is alive and awake. So if Gustin is portraying a daydream, he's portraying his sense of conscience. So how is he then that Klansman? How is he that hooded figure? I think it can only be interpreted as his thought that when there is wrongdoing in the world, everyone is complicit. Possible. So what are dreams useful for? Dreams can actually change our lives. They can set us on a course that we would not have without their aid. This wonderful painting by Carracci, The Dream of Catherine of Alexandria, is an example of it illustrates just that power of a dream. In The Dream of Catherine, she has fallen asleep as a young woman, and Mary brings baby Jesus to her, and Jesus puts on her finger a ring. And when she wakes, she sees that ring that you see on her, and she is now wedded to Christ. And this sense of commitment is lifelong for her. And she debates the governor of Alexandria's learned men and converts them to Christianity. So the governor throws her into prison, and she's fed by beautiful doves that fly through the prison bars. Then the governor's wife comes to visit her, and Catherine converts her to Christianity. So the governor's not happy about that, and he executes his wife. And he asks Catherine to marry him, and she says, I'd rather die, and as a matter of fact, please behead me. And so she's beheaded, and what flows from her veins when she's beheaded is the purest white milk, all from a dream, that energy. This marvelous painting by Antonio de Pereira, The Knight's Dream, this illustrates the use of a dream to set us on the right path. Here, the knight who has all the world on his table there in his possession, dozes on his elbow. And you can see all the objects that describe his wealth. There's the globe, he's a trader, he has money. There's the mask of theater, a gun for hunting. And then as you sweep around circularly through that painting, you come to that vertical clock. And that clock is the memento mori. Time is running out. And it points upwards to an angel who comes and says, it stabs suddenly and for all. Death. So he will wake up with this lesson that the worldly wealth means nothing, and he needs to focus his spiritual development. The other Joseph, the New Testament Joseph, in Matthew's account, he has learned that the woman he's just married is pregnant, and he hasn't met her yet. So he's concerned, and he decides to to divorce her quietly. But when he falls asleep, the angel comes and explains to him that this was ordained by God and everything's going to be fine. And when he wakes, he's committed to that union. And the last painting I would like to share with you is Dalí's The Broken Bridge in the Dream. And this is another Jacob's Ladder painting, but the bridge proposes to be broken. And yet the figures ascend, and they ascend heavenwards. And as Peter has pointed out, there are two figures in the foreground. One points to the earth and one points to the heavens. And so we have a choice. We can embrace the dream and ascend the broken bridge, or we can remain below. Our choice. So thank you. And I'd love to answer any questions about the show. Yes, sir.
Yes, well, of course, needless to say, you captivated the audience, and it seems as though, to me anyway, that you presented as much of your own worldview as you have of the subject of dreams.
I excuse myself for that.
Well, I mean, it was not only revealing but beneficial, I think, to the audience. And it seems like your worldview is to go around and look for and find every little element of value added as you can. And that's what I see in this presentation about dreams. You went around the literature and the history of dreams, and you found everything of value that you could and shared it today. And of course, you began the presentation with the question, what did we dream? So I think it would be appropriate and maybe even forgivable if I asked you, what did you dream last night?
Very frankly, I dreamt of the house I grew up in, and I was trying to get up early to finish this talk. And it was 3 a.m, and I said to Laura, I want to go back to sleep. I've got 20 minutes until 4. And I went back to where I had just gotten out of bed in the dining room, which had a bed in it for some reason, and it was gone, and there was this Persian rug, and the room was vacant. And then my alarm went off. So, yes, sir.
I noticed there are different colors in dreams. Do we dream in color?
I think we do. I do.
Why does that occur? I don't understand.
How does it occur? Oh, it occurs because every part of the brain, like the occipital cortex, where we have sight in the back of our heads, V1 through V5 neurologically, those things are active, and they create connections to emotions and to place, and there's all this activity going on. And so what has been seen and recollected is elicited and comes forward, and we experience. And that's what the rapid eye movement is. The reason our eyes move behind the lids is that we're actually seeing our dream. And if there's something over here in our dream, we're looking at it spatially. So
Then how does the artist know what color to paint?
it's in that way, dreaming is like making art. It's who knows where that comes from. It's a mystery. The artist has the freedom to add the color one wishes, and apparently in dreams we don't have a lot of choice. Either they're one color or no color or whatever. Yes, sir.
Great job. Great job, Hank, and thank you. What about the concept of time in dreams? Deja vu, I've been there before, I dreamt something, and then I see it in real life in the future.
The gentleman was asking about the different time scales, and I think that's the real evolutionary value of dreams, is that It combines recent experiences with old ones and helps you to, if like Joseph, to resolve a current situation, or the reverse, to see a past experience in a new light, and helps you resolve your life through these disparate memories from different time scales. Yes?
Will you please share your thoughts on lucid dreaming?
Yes. We had the lecture that was a month ago that I mentioned. Dr. Ruth was very much in favor of cultivating your ability to lucid dream. Now, lucid dreaming describes a state in which you are aware that you're dreaming while you're dreaming, and that you then have some control over it. And there's been a lot of clinical experiments with lucid dreaming. You're taught to move your hand in a certain way, and the more you do it, the more likely you are to be able to do it. So in a clinical situation, you're instructed, when you are aware you're dreaming, move your hand. And so there is that indication to the observer that you are in this dream and lucid dreaming. She thinks it gives you great power over resolving issues. I have just an ounce of skepticism about the value of cultivating it, simply because I think the hyperassociativity which happens without being aware that you're dreaming is a creative spark. And if you can control too much what you dream, perhaps you could be limited to some extent in the disparate memories that come together.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Yes?
Yes, my name's Dave, and I had a dream that I was going to meet you today, but my question to you is, did you ever dream of becoming the executive director of the
No, I never dreamed beforehand, but I have a lot of dreams in which I've got a bunch of things to do here.
But you must have had, did you have a spark or a thought that maybe would take you to the art world and books and writing and English and poetry?
Yeah, I had a spark. I was a pre-med major, and I was in a library and looking at a Mesoamerican scroll, and it was pictographic, and there was some writing that described what was going on, but mostly it was images, and it was about the Mixtec people and their migration from farther north, and it described I thought, helping people as a physician would be the most noble thing you could do, most ambitious, and I saw this scroll, and it described these people's lives in its entirety. It described where they came from, what their relation to their gods was, what plants they should cultivate and in what seasons, what their relations one to another should be, how to be lucky in love. I thought, this is the most ambitious thing I can imagine. And I started gravitating towards an art career. Thank you. Grace Hine. My beautiful daughter and her recent husband, that is recently married, are here visiting from California. So I'm delighted that they came. Yes, baby, what is it?
Knowing your affinity for literature and mythology, what would you say your experience is with the role that dreams play in mythology, like the story of Orpheus and Odysseus?
Yes. Well, I think they're totally interconnected. And Joseph Campbell said it really well. He said, myths are public dreams, and dreams are private myths. So you can think of mythology as the kind of expansion from a personal dream to a kind of public dream. But they certainly do all have that great capacity as a dream can to explain multiple things, without losing their coherence. They are metaphoric. they stay whole while explaining something over here. Well, thank you all, and have a great day.